Late on the night of December 3rd, 1973, not far from the heart of Saigon, the sky over the lower reaches of the Long Tao River flared as if dawn had arrived too early. This was Nha Be, once a commercial way station, transformed by war into something far more vital. A vast fuel complex of towering storage tanks, pipelines, docks, barges, and tankers that fed the pulse of a city, its power plants, its traffic, and the machinery of conflict itself. For years, a large share of South Vietnam's petroleum storage was concentrated around this area, positioned on waterways that could carry fuel out to sea, into the Mekong Delta, and straight toward Saigon. Whoever could disrupt the flow of fuel was reaching for the bloodstream of a nation stretched thin by war. By 1973, this was no longer the era of massive American buildup that defined the late 1960s. The Paris Peace Accords had been signed months earlier, and most U.S. combat forces had withdrawn. Yet peace on paper did not extinguish the fighting on the ground. Skirmishes, raids, and attacks on supply lines continued, because modern war is decided not only in battles at the front, but also in the ability to keep the front alive. In that struggle, Nha Be was both symbolic and technical. If it burned, the loss would not be measured only in barrels of fuel, but in the shock of realizing that even a heavily guarded, strategically essential target could be reached. Contemporary reporting and intelligence assessments describe the December 3rd strike as a rocket attack that devastated the Shell sector of the tank farm, while other company facilities were less affected. Estimates of the fuel destroyed varied, but even conservative figures ran into the hundreds of thousands of barrels, enough to represent many days of normal civilian consumption. What made the impact especially severe was that most of the fuel stored there was intended for civilian use: electricity generation, transportation, household needs, and industry, not simply military supply. The consequences therefore spread faster than the smoke column itself, into sudden station closures, rationing measures, and an urban rhythm forced to stumble under the weight of scarcity in a system dependent on imports and fragile reserves. But Nha Be was never merely a fuel depot in the simplest sense. It was a system, an engineered landscape of steel tanks packed close together, tied by valves and pipelines, supported by specialized docks and storage yards, defended by fences, guards, and patrols. And it sat near a geography that shaped its own kind of warfare: the canals and mudflats of the Rung Sac mangrove zone, where the river was both highway and hiding place. In this terrain, raids did not always announce themselves with marching columns. They arrived through darkness and water, through careful reconnaissance, through patience measured in weeks and months. When a target like Nha Be was hit, the fire told only the final chapter. The earlier chapters were written in silent movement, mapping, and timing inside a landscape notoriously difficult to control. For planners on either side, fuel is a special kind of target, highly flammable, strategically irreplaceable in the short term, and tied to infrastructure too large to move or conceal. Ammunition can be dispersed, units can relocate, but enormous tank farms and dedicated petroleum docks cannot vanish overnight. If ignition occurs at the right point, cascading effects can multiply. Heat weakens structures, pressure rises, adjacent tanks become vulnerable, and flames travel with wind, vapor, and human panic. That is why installations like Nha Be always sit high on wartime priority lists. One side must defend them at all costs. The other needs only to prove that no place is truly untouchable. In the aftermath came a different kind of battle: logistics under stress. When a major reserve burns, the problem is not only extinguishing the fire, it is rerouting shipments, delaying tanker arrivals when storage is unavailable, drawing down other stockpiles, and imposing restrictions to stretch what remains. These decisions can sound administrative, but in 1973 they carried strategic weight. The tighter the supply system becomes, the less resilience it has. And the less resilience it has, the more a single night of destruction can ripple into longer-term weakness. Seen in hindsight, Nha Be in 1973 stood at the crossroads of two eras. One was the period when the war had been sustained by enormous industrial and logistical expansion, bases, ports, depots growing year after year. The other was a period when South Vietnam's future depended increasingly on limited resources, on the ability to sustain itself while its adversary continued to apply pressure across multiple regions. In that context, an attack on a fuel complex did not need to win by holding ground. It could succeed by disrupting, depleting, and forcing the defender to spread security forces thinner still, making every day of continuation more costly than the last. For civilians in Saigon and the surrounding districts, the memory of Nha Be is not only military history. It is the moment war illuminated the city with its own fire, the reflection on the river, the smoke rolling into the night, the sudden realization that something ordinary, fuel for vehicles, oil for generators, energy for electricity, had become a target. In that moment, the war was no longer distant. It reached the gas station, the kitchen stove, the morning commute. Nha Be also reveals a core truth of modern conflict. Decisive blows are not always delivered where crowds can witness them, but at the nodes of supply, ports, depots, river junctions, where a brief window of chaos can create days or weeks of consequences. And in a long war like Vietnam, such strikes did not stand alone. They were part of a persistent logic: erode capacity, drain endurance, force the enemy to defend everywhere at once, and make the continuation of war progressively harder to sustain. When the flames at Nha Be finally died down, what remained was more than scorched steel and statistical estimates. What remained was a marker of how vulnerable logistics can be under wartime pressure, and how an attack on a single essential system can echo far beyond the blast itself. Nha Be, December 1973, was therefore not merely a spectacular fire. It was a strategic message written in flame, that in war, the shortest path to shaking a machine is not always a direct clash at the front, but a strike against the hidden lifeline that keeps the machine moving day after day.